Great, thank you. It's June 9th, and we are the Shade Tree Commission, and we will start our meeting for this evening. We have all commission members here, though we are without our technical help of Ann Bonner and David Riggs. They're busy doing convention things, I think, and at a training. So, we have no Title 33 tree permit, right-of-way, or public land issues, nor do we have Title 37 landscape ordinance issues, nor maintenance of tree canopy issues. So, it's not a big tree taking care of time, I guess. So, we have now new business.
Do we have to approve the minutes?
Oh, we do have to approve the minutes. Thank you.
Not a problem.
So, we have the minutes. Is there any corrections or anything to that?
None noted by me.
Do we want to talk about that in the policy roll-on committees and just,
Yeah.
okay. So,
Okay.
okay, so we have a move to adopt the minutes.
Second.
Thank you, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Are these minutes?
No, those are my notes. Ann sent them around. Ann sent them around to your email.
Email.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Okay, we could talk about new business. We were all tasked last commission meeting with new committees that we formed. And so all of us are on one or two committees, and we all had homework to go and do. And I'm super happy to say that everybody did homework, and we have reports from all the committees. I want to make sure everybody kind of understands which committee is which, because the minutes were a little confusing. So, the policy committee is like all the paperwork, the guidelines, and any permitting forms or ordinances or any of those sort of things. And she's been doing a review. So that's like policy, I call it policy and paperwork. So, okay. And Jim, you've been doing data and looking at some of the issues and questions that we might want to have an intern for and stuff like that. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay. Because in the minutes, you were also doing outreach and event planning. So,
Yeah,
okay. And then the event one is basically events, outreach, and education. So, great. Cool. Awesome. So let's talk and do our reports. Do you want to start, Roxanne?
Sure. I hope everybody had an opportunity to see the email that I sent. So last meeting, I was tasked with meeting with David Riggs, and it was to review what does Shade Tree do according to code, and have we communicated that internally to ourselves so we understand the procedures, but also to the community so they understand the procedures. And I think we can all agree, not exactly. We're getting there. We're getting there. So I sat down with David and I said, what are your pain points when it comes to trees? And he identified some things, but also I identified a couple pain points. And what I mean by that is when I went into code, we have Title 33, Title 37, Title 40, Title 1, and Title 9 that all refer to shade tree. And guess what? They're not consistent. And we sort of knew that. So in looking at it, it says in code that Shade Tree must approve. So sometimes we are a recommendation committee and sometimes we are an approval committee. So it says we must approve new street or widening of existing streets, planting or preserving of shade trees along new streets and widening streets. And as we know, Shade Tree was not consulted, for example, when they did the Stimson extension.
Shade Tree is never consulted.
Well, and there's a reason. Because we deal with David Riggs, who is from Code Office. And guess what? Street widening isn't under code. It's under EPW.
Oh.
So what is going to happen is that we either have to remove from code that we have that authority and responsibility, or we need to start interfacing with another city department.
What department would that be?
So that's EPW? It's engineering. And,
Well, that's not necessarily true, because those sort of specialty city projects like that, those are like the only ones that we wouldn't, because the other ones for private development and stuff, all those other ones would come in. But all at the
Right.
same time, it might make more sense for us to interface with the planning people, Paul,
Well,
you know?
planning,
To maybe, instead of going with the EPW, go and interface with Paul, because in the very beginning, they do all that listening and all that sort of
The
stuff.
planning people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Paul Logue.
well, what David recommended is that we reach out to Andy Stone,
Okay.
who oversees everything, and then just say, hey, we noticed an inconsistency, we serve at the pleasure of the city, what are we gonna do? Okay, and then any new street developed in a subdivision also falls under our must approve. Now, there's another category which is must review and make recommendations to the Planning Commission, and that's when there are any variances from Title 37 on a plat. So that could be alterations to existing buildings or renovations that exceed certain limits. That's another thing that we don't review. So when you see a house where, you know, the renovation is going to be more than 25% of the floor plan, theoretically, we're supposed to make sure that they comply just like the new developers do. And we haven't been looking at that. Now, I think that David was like, well, Shade Tree just makes recommendations to the Planning Commission. And I'm like, the code said we must make recommendations, and we're not.
Let me ask
So-
you this. Do we also make recommendations for other than, like a house? Like, if somebody new buys an old business, do they need to comply with
No.
new?
Not unless there is changes to parking or floor plan or valuation. And it's laid out in code what thresholds you have to hit that you would trigger this. And I think that in the past, we have wondered why things have gone to the Planning Commission but haven't come to us. So I talked to David about it, and what it is when we deal with code, they have approval forms. And that triggers David to involve Shade Tree. These other processes don't have approval forms. They do not trigger a process. So it's written into code, but it's actually not codified. So we need to talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the other thing that we talked about is site plan reviews. He's very thankful that he has us to help him with the site plan reviews.
You know, when the last time that was reviewed and updated?
Title 41?
Yeah.
Old.
Old. Like,
Yeah.
That was my first project when I came on city council.
Yeah. So one of the
So
things.
it's a long time.
Wow. So one of the things that we have talked about when we have developers come and visit us is that we are given pages and pages of squint vision architectural documents. And while we need some of those images, we also wanted to have a form which said, how much permeable acreage do you have? How much impermeable? What's the calculation for trees? So in the email that I sent you, it gives an example of what that form would look like. And so I would really like within the next week for you to comment on that, because if we agree, then the city is going to begin to create a PDF document that we can then review.
Good.
That should help us with our applications. The other thing, that we talked about was the maintenance of trees. And this really falls within FAQs of, hey, I think I have a tree and I don't know if it's on the city right away. How do I find out? That FAQ talks about how you can go to the city website, how you can contact code, etc. if it is on, the city property, what do I have to do with pruning and removal? And so there, as part of the document that I sent, there are a list of FAQs, which we would like to put up on the Shade Tree webpage.
Yes.
So please look at that. See if you agree with the language. David has already, approved it, but we need to look at it as well. And then the other thing that we had is just a comment from him that he said, when we have developers come in, I hear that Shade Tree really wants to have trees within the parking. And he said that is in code in some cities, but it is not part of our code.
Maybe we should ask for it to be.
So
Well,
there are pluses and minuses
Yeah.
to having it in there. And what he said is he wants to have the conversation with the city. They have tried to put trees within parking lots, and if it's not done properly, it's more of a headache. But he did want to express to us that he just felt that sometimes there were times where he felt like we were holding up an application because you didn't do this. And he just wanted to remind us it's not in code. We can suggest.
I don't think we ever held up anything anyway.
Just as a caution, he wanted us to know that if we feel strongly about it, we should work with the city to make the recommendation that they move forward with some code, but it isn't in code already.
well, I think we need to look at the landscape plan and the parking code because
Could
both
you
of-
speak to us down here too?
Okay, sorry. The landscape plan and the parking code have to be looked at too because they do speak to, like if you don't have enough parking spaces and you have to start getting rid of trees or not planting the trees, then you can reduce the parking spaces, that sort of thing that was written into the new parking and such. So I think all of them together should be looked at.
Right, now the parking, we would not have purview over the parking spaces, but we would have purview over whether or not we allowed tree banking.
Right, yes, there is that. But now it is in the code that we can also, that the code can reduce the amount of parking required by like.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah,
so-
the only thing
So
that we.
it does talk to it. I think that it needs to have all of them looked straight across to see that everything that refers to us makes sense. And then I think we need to get Lisa to look at it too.
I agree. I would just caution that we have a lane and we need to stay in our lane.
And I think that it's good if there are things that don't make sense in the landscape plan or the parking code, we should make them all at the same time so they all read the same sort of language.
I totally agree with that. And
Yeah.
also, I'm not against at all making recommendations. If we feel strongly that trees should be within parking, then we should make that recommendation to the
so.
city.
Yep. I
And that is
agree.
something that we can do.
Right.
The other thing that I feel strongly about, that I just asked about a minute ago, people who buy old properties, if they're not asked to renovate, then we continue to have bad-looking spots in the neighborhoods. Blight sets in. I mean, you should see some of the stuff that's going on the east side. I mean, it's really pretty ugly.
Yeah, what I would say is that I think that Shade Tree really needs to work very closely with code. We have the pollinator program, where people are now asking, well, if I have a pollinator garden and I want to have grass, but then there's the ordinance where grass can't be above, I think it's 8 or 9 inches, And there are times where we need to understand with code what they are and are not willing to enforce. Because if we get ourselves into a situation where, for example, somebody buys a home and they want to renovate it and they exceed the limit and we're supposed to approve a plan and the homeowners say no and code won't enforce it, we don't have a lot of teeth.
I'm talking mostly about commercial rather than home.
Yeah, so when we talk about site plans in Title 41, that part of our process seems to be working pretty well. We have a really good relationship with David. We're getting the paperwork, we're approving it, but literally 3/4 of what we're supposed to be doing with reviews is not happening.
Okay.
And we just sort of have to get the city, I think, to tell us,
Whether they want us to or not.
yes, and
And if they
if
do-
not, then we have to change code.
Yeah.
Well, I think also you have to, there is a difference between commercial, which Title 41 talks to, and some of the other triggering.
Which is in Title 33.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So what's the difference?
most of it, there is more onerous on commercial developments
thought.
and such. We don't dictate what sort of trees a person puts in their backyard.
Yeah, I was thinking more about.
But the
Right.
thing is that if there's city right-of-way,
That's where we come in. So
So-
having people understand about city right-of-ways is super important.
yeah. And that does have to do with new streets, but it also has to do with non-commercial upgrades. And we're not doing it. So, I don't know. So, and actually, that part is Title 37, by the way. So the streets are in 33, and the non-commercial upgrades is in Title 37. And then we have the site plans, which is in Title 41. So, David isn't here right now.
I thought he was going to bring us the right-of-way plan.
I know.
I'm so excited.
So one of the, Jim, you're going to talk about that. So David is going to provide us with a thumb drive that has GIS maps that, Jim can then incorporate when he does the aerial photography reviews. So we'll have city right away.
Oh, wow.
Maps,
Like
yeah.
detailed. Cool.
Yes,
Oh, wow.
yes, detailed.
This is really important foundational stuff.
We're getting
to get
there.
started.
Yeah. We know where the conversation sort of has to go, but I guess my question to the committee is, I've raised multiple issues. What's your priority? If we want to tackle one thing first, is it the FAQs that has to do with the city right-of-ways and letting people know about that? That's sort of my priority, or
Right.
is it
I think.
trying to get code aligned?
Well, I think that if one goes and starts asking city council to do changes to the code, we want to do them all at the same time. Because we don't want to waste people's time, and we want to get them all so that they try to read together the right way. I think some of the issues that you're talking about overlap with some of the things that we talked about priorities, but also I think that something that's completely overall is this idea of how we get across information and FAQs.
Yeah.
My resolution from city council was I was the queen of FAQs. So those are used a lot. I don't know if people, use them and stuff.
Well-
But there's other ways in that, and we talked some about, because that's also an outreach.
Yeah, I think
So,
that's
right?
part of education and outreach. I talked to Scott, and we can get the FAQs on the webpage. So as soon as I hear from a quorum on the FAQs,
There's only one problem.
Yes.
If we're putting FAQs and answers, to those, and they're not what we want. I mean, if we haven't made the changes in the procedures and the
this is based
code.
on current code. All the
I mean, if
FAQs
we
are
don't-
based on
If we don't
current code.
change, don't ask for the changes in the code first, then
That's
we're-
going to take a lot more
Yeah.
time.
but
The
there's some things we
FAQs
shouldn't be giving bad
Well,
answers to.
Right.
The FAQs right now only refer really to code that we don't propose to change.
Okay, that's good, that's good.
So like the definition of
That's
city
what I-
right
that's-
away
yes,
and
yes.
just,
I think that's a good place to start.
okay, so we'll start there. Scott says that we can have FAQs, and maybe once we have the FAQs up, then the Education Outreach Committee can figure out how best to disseminate that information. But I still think that an important question to code is, okay, somebody comes and cuts down a tree, once we know that we have a communication strategy and it's out there for a while, and people should know better, okay? Then will code actually enforce it? Because if it won't, it's kind of a moot point. So, Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
Good.
Cool. Okay. So our next step for this, our homework, is to go and read those FAQs,
Yes, please.
comment, and get the comments back to you.
And if you have additional FAQs that
Yeah.
you think would be important,
Right.
let us know.
And then we'll start looking at all the different code language and start working on stuff like that.
Yep,
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
yeah.
Right. Okay, event committee. I see where you said that. I said I didn't do that. So
What?
your name is wrong. Sorry.
Oh, well, that's a very usual thing that happens.
Okay. Okay. We met, Catherine and Nancy and I, to talk about, and the first thing we did was kind of redefine ourselves, because events kind of leads into outreach, which is also education. So, and we talked a bit about what sort of mission statement we would have for our committee and some of the ideas covering that. And you were talking about the pillars, the 5 pillars that the Arbor Tree people talk.
Oh, yes, I wish I had that paperwork with me. Yeah, the Arbor Day, and also the Arbor organization within its Tree City and within its growth awards divides out 5 different, I wish I had brought that with me, but 5 different areas of tree activity. And our work, as you're defining it out here, falls kind of neatly within those. And this one, events, outreach, and education is one of the areas.
Right. So,
And it has like a lot of things. There are lots of ideas. All we need is more ideas, but it has lots of ideas of things to do.
so, and then we talked about how there's a billion things we could do to get people excited about trees. So we decided that since we were talking about timelines and calendars, that it would be good to start getting just things on the calendar and projects out there. So one of the ones, the first ones we talked about is having this video series on the government channel and on Facebook and such. I talked with Amy Delac. She's the chairperson of the Sustainability Commission, and I was talking about having a co-chair and picking topics from them, from their membership, and then from ours, and putting together. I'll meet with Scott to talk about what exactly we can do and timelines and sort of hours that we can do. So lots of topics that you can put there. Tree care 101 and how to remove ivy from trees and a lot of things, pollinator stuff. So, right? What else did we talk about that? So I'll get with Amy too, and we'll kind of hash it out, right? Okay. So that's kind of a thing that we can start now, sort of thing. Okay. And then we decided that we wanted to have a mid-range, and that was the Arbor Day events and all the things that we can do around for it. The first thing we need to do is develop a date and a task force that's going to kind of coordinate everything. We're kind of doing it already, so the events commission person, the events committee can be the lead, so, okay.
I think a date, I know at a previous meeting, it was mentioned, I think by Director David, that David Riggs, that it would be helpful for the mayor and city people to have a date so they can begin to work their schedules around it. I don't know if that's something we can even discuss today.
Well, I brought my calendar.
All right.
So when do we have, I think that it used to be planned kind of, what is the last date we can get our application in? So we don't need to do that. So I don't know when's the date, is that?
December 1, we need to
December 1.
have it in. And then we need a little time
Right.
between there to prepare the
Right.
documentation from the Arbor
Right.
Day.
So we were looking at like September and October.
Yeah,
So.
exactly.
So
I think
maybe.
that'd be great, because the students will be back.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. And some of the tie-ins that we were talking about with this is the hearts. I'm going to do those hearts. But with the students coming back in, you can give them away, and the people in the farmers market can give it, and we can work one of the other ideas was also to work with Wendy McVicker, who's our poet laureate, and do some work around Arbor Day in the schools.
Maybe giving away some trees would be a good idea.
Yeah, that would be the Arbor Day people, once we tell them. And then kind of, we wanted to do a kind of a longer, long range to kind of tie in some of these things. And Nancy came up with this idea about looking and seeing what we have in terms of an arboretum at a city level.
At least a space where we can say, come and see our beautiful spot in Athens.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that Nancy Stevens, as part of the outdoor
Yes.
museum, is now putting
Yes.
together, tours. And one of the things that they're doing are the trees.
Right.
And actually,
And I
they're
think-
all online now. It seems like the list of tours is growing.
Mm-hmm.
And I did one for the Ridges, prepared it for them, of course.
Yay, thank you.
But there's one up already that Susan prepared for the trees on it's like a tree
Very
tour
good.
on the Ridges. There's one, no, not Susan, yeah, Susan. Susan also prepared one for College Green. So they're already up and going
Yeah,
for
so-
the university spaces.
Rather than having, maybe an arboretum in the traditional sense,
Yes.
we have a virtual tour of
Well,
the
there
arboretum.
are two different things, and I think both of them are good possibilities. I mean, I think a place, like at the park where is one of the spots that we talked about. We could even put it at the west West
Oh, you're
State
talking
Park.
about planting new trees. Sorry, I
Well,
apologize.
Well, one
I
of the things that
misunderstood.
I think
we
both
talk-
and, yeah.
They're both. One of the things is that if we go and look at all the resources that are out there now, and, but are they missing certain areas? Are they missing maybe trees that we could provide in some of our tree planting plans in the future? Or it could be, maybe somebody could be matched up with a celebration tree or something to help these, not to recreate it, but to get because people, right now, there's like 4 or 5 different ones, and to see what's out there and to get people involved.
First, we have to get approval, or at least acceptance, from the city, I suppose, that we want to do something, or have a spot where we're going to do something special with either celebratory trees or trees that we're able to buy that are special. And also that we can take some of the money that we allocate for trees, take it off the top and buy a couple of nice trees for the
There
arboretum.
are a couple potential spots. One is the riparian area where they're clearing out the
Yes,
invasives,
yes,
and they do want to
right.
have trees there. There's another.
It certainly could use some trees.
That Jim and I are going to talk about. We might be able to work with the city to get some trees along the river.
That's right.
Wow.
That we are trying to
I've been
push
talking
that.
to Ann about that all along.
Yeah,
I don't know
and
why we can't get some trees there.
Well, right now, land is split between the university, the conservancy,
I
and
know,
the city,
I know.
and we're trying to figure out what is city land, because then
were
we
trying
have that.
We were trying to
ability.
get people to leave the banks alone and let
Jim's going to talk about that a little bit, but I wanted to talk about just one thing, maybe two, with the potential video topics or the topics. I don't think that people understand city right away.
Oh, yeah.
And I would really like to have a video that
Oh, yeah.
explains to them, you think it's your property, you sort of mow it and maintain it like it's your property, but it's not your property
Oh, yeah.
in terms of some things. So that's one. But we have another issue. We lost another tree on Court Street last week. Students are, once again, we think it's students because we think we know the group, are hanging off the trees. And they snapped one of the more mature trees, and it had to be removed. And if you could do your hearts or something like that, I would advocate for doing it on public,
Oh, yeah.
right of ways, so people could maybe understand that those trees are loved and there for a purpose other than hanging out
Exactly.
and hanging on after they exit the bar.
Well, and that's the idea about something bright and, something like that, is
Yeah.
that outreach and such.
Yeah.
I think that the videos, not only can we find videos out there that we can put on, but Ryan and people can also make videos. They made the Wistendal video, which we talked about. So something like that would be awesome because we can show like the death and dying tree.
I would love to have the
Yeah.
students actually do it for us, so that way it speaks to them. Because just in the
They
last
just
2
got an
years,
intern.
That's a good
Intern.
idea.
we lost 3 trees on Court Street.
We
Due to
should just
this,
electrify them.
Sort of tree vandalism.
What about the film department? Is there somebody there that we could talk to about it?
Yeah, we could talk to the film department. We could also talk to visual communications. You know how they do 24 hours where they take pictures?
48.
Or 48, you're right, it's 48. Who knows,
Okay.
maybe we could do trees.
Right, okay.
How about that?
So what are the hearts? You had it in your email you sent. I don't know
Oh,
what hearts are.
what we've talked about before, a lot of places when they do an outreach campaign for like Arbor Day or people want to start cutting all the trees in the park down, they'll do a outreach where they'll give people usually price tags, like this tree is worth so much because it saves energy or air conditioning. But another way you can do that is put hearts on it and say why you like that tree, sort of thing. And
Okay.
you give people it, and then you start noticing that there's a lot more hearts and
Or
sort of
sometimes you'll
thing.
see big ribbons
Big
around
ribbons.
trees.
Yep. So it's just one of those,
Gimmicks.
gimmicks.
Could I add one thing that just from a personal perspective, I like the idea of tagging trees in a way that makes people pay more attention to them. Obviously, because for the most part, people see a big tree and like, yeah, it's a tree, whatever, and they just mosey along their way off to get a burger somewhere. But I think including the price of that would, at least personally for me, would, I know I'm not completely unique in the world, would carry or at least bear a little bit more weight, just because seeing like an actual attainable, like fixed monetary value has a real impact, as opposed to, I like this tree because it's pretty. Well, like, I don't care if it's pretty.
Right.
The tree's worth $1,300. Whoa, that's a lot.
And then you could have underneath it that says code. If anybody damages this,
Indeed.
this is what you're paying,
that's what I
plus it's a misdemeanor, plus it's another
And
$100.
you're responsible for fixing it if you heard it.
Yeah.
I do like that idea, but I especially like the idea of having a fixed price.
Well,
Right.
you
Well,
know-
we were thinking on the back, we could also have information,
Yeah.
where to do, sort of thing. And then that way we can, get information out and then we can give them with tree, when we do tree giveaways and.
Oh, yeah,
There
we could
is-
even just make a little QR code that goes on the back. People just,
Yeah.
everybody walks by with their
That's a really
phones.
good idea.
There-
Doink.
There's
Oh.
a great
Oh my
student
gosh.
organization called PRSSA, which is run out of the College of Communication. And it's a group of students, and when you want some kind of marketing campaign, they tell you what's going to translate to the students. And I know a lot of the students in that, and they might be willing to take this on as
Yeah.
one of their,
How about that?
communications. If you wanted to reach out, I'd be happy to try and facilitate, a meeting
yeah.
for you. They've done some great things.
That's a great idea. By the way, that clip that you had about all the different things going on, the video that you.
Oh,
on-
yeah, the video that I did, yeah.
Yeah, that was cute.
Okay.
I kept, my cousin is in the botany department, and she has kids that do research with fish. And I kept looking for the fish and clipping.
Okay.
I think there are a lot of people, many people also have stories about trees. You ask kids, you ask people think about their childhood, or different people have personal, historical, or more
Yeah.
recent stories about the meaning of trees
Right.
to them.
Well, and.
Side note.
Well, so that sort of brings us around also that one thing that we need, I think, to be able to develop, maybe with some people who are graphic artists, are some nice brochures and stuff so that we can have stuff ready. So if somebody's going to the farmer's market or to a tree giveaway, that we have something or several of them, sort of thing, that can go maybe with a trifold or something.
You might want to reach out to the Center for Campus and Community Engagement, because they can then put it out on
a work study.
Give Pulse.
Yeah.
Or just volunteers. There are many students who are trying to build their portfolios and are looking for outreach projects. So,
Okay, so that's kind of the things that we've been talking about. Our priorities are the low-hanging fruit, which I think is the video and information.
Education in general.
Education in general. And then the Arbor Day events. So we will contact, I'll get with Patty and have her start figuring out what the best sort of dates are.
Okay. let them-
if we're gonna
let
do
them
the
figure it out.
FAQs though for, just the city right
Right.
away and all that,
Yeah.
we definitely need to have a communication strategy
Yes.
before we actually try to enforce.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that once we kind of know what the products we need are, and then we can figure out who can help us out.
Yeah,
So, great, thank you.
yeah, great work.
Did you have anything else to add?
Although I wondered, do you think there's a reason why David's not here?
No, I don't know what the answer is because when I spoke to him early in the week, he was planning on being here, so something must have just come up. He was absolutely planning on being here.
He's key to our,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
He's got a deer under his
Right.
car.
Anything else you want to add with the committee?
No, I think that's good,
Okay.
yeah.
So,
thank you for handling that.
okay, trees by the bus stops, that's such a song, you know?
Oh, the wheels on the bus, or,
That's,
is
yes.
it, was it
Now
the
that
Hollies bus stop? Yeah. Well, last week, let's see, Mary Reed of the Arbor Day Committee asked me if I wanted to, I saw her at the community garden, if I wanted to ride along with her and Ann Bonner and Ann's intern, Joey, while they flagged bus stops for tree planting. So I guess this goes back to an initiative that was originated with Mary and the Arbor Day Committee to plant shade trees by the bus stops. I think it came up earlier in one of our earlier meetings about being mindful of the solar and not shade, not the solar. So the task on last Friday, it was a warm day, a good day for doing this, was to ride around and flag the trees where they would go around selected bus stops. Apparently the next step is ready, which is for city engineering needs to go and check the sites for utilities and just see how well trees will work there, property lines right away. And but they wanted flags so they would know where to go around the bus stop. So we went around and let's see, I think there were 17 different locations on West Union, Columbus, Lancaster, East State, Richland, and one on Court Street. And got out and walked around and stuck flags in where the trees would go. And Mary prepared a spreadsheet of the location, the suggested number and species of trees that would work best for maybe they need to be more narrow trees because of signage, and then she made notes about considerations. Who are the owners? Is it private property? So forth. So this is ready now for engineering to take that next step and
So, did I hear
look.
you right that some of the property is private, it's not city right away?
they weren't sure. But no,
Okay,
and
so it's gotta go
those-
to code?
Well, they're not flagged, but I guess the question is someone has to, let's see where it is
So
here.
David Riggs would tell you if it's city right away, not engineering.
Oh,
No,
okay.
engineering needs to go out and look for
They have
lines
to
and
look at the
stuff.
utilities.
Right, but that
so-
doesn't make sense until you find, I think some things have to happen first.
Well, I think we did not flag the ones where there were questions.
Okay, because,
And like
yeah.
Mary has informal, she's going to talk to people about possibilities.
Mary's also, she's looked at right away
Yeah.
maps and stuff, so.
okay,
And the low-hanging fruit on right-of-ways would be done first anyway.
okay,
sort of thing.
but here's the caution, two things. One, we can only use our tree bank for city right away.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that Catherine Ann has made it very clear that she wants to be involved in these conversations.
Right.
Not, yeah, so make
this
sure
is-
that she's in before you have
Right.
engineering.
And I think this is a result of the MOU that we now have with the Arbor Day, and now this has come to us to sort of facilitate, I guess, is our role.
This has been in the works for many, many years.
I don't
And-
doubt that.
right,
I'm just
so-
saying, Catherine Ann has said more than once, and if you're listening, hi. She doesn't want any planning in the city without her first review. Before it goes to engineering, before it goes to code, before it goes anywhere, she wants to know. Because they're gonna be responsible
For
potentially
reminding
for the
it.
planting and the maintenance, yeah, and she's afraid of unfunded mandates. So I love what you're doing, I'm just
Well, it's not
saying-
me. I'm just,
or what Mary's
yeah.
doing, or whoever's doing it, do not get,
Does she sometimes have
Shade
some sort of
tree
veto
in-
quality?
Don't get too far out
Does she have
ahead.
some sort of veto?
yes. Sure, the
the
city
cart.
could say
Yeah,
that
horse.
the tree will not be planted. Sure, and yes, she does have that veto power. But we don't want her, we don't want it to be a
We can
negative.
send it down.
We want her to be on board and understand, and I'm just afraid that the city is so decentralized that sometimes we don't know who we have to talk to. And you would sort of hope that they were talking to each other, but it's, you know, like any large organization, they're not. And we just have to make sure that we involve everybody such that everybody feels like they're being included.
So now we have this committee involved, so what would be the next step for something like this to go to Catherine Ann probably, or?
I think it would be to Catherine Ann and to Andrew Chicky and to David
Stone.
Riggs and then also to engineering. So in other words, maybe
That's-
Andy Stone
No,
would be the
it's
best
already
person.
with,
Yeah, that's what I was
David
thinking.
is working as kind of a coordinator.
David
He's-
Riggs is already
yes.
working as a coordinator.
And so they've been talking about this. After the flagging, then David and one of the engineering people were going to go out and make sure that there were no sewer lines and stuff like that before it went any further. So if the list that's on right-of-ways needs to go to Catherine Ann, let's send it there and she can nix them all or what, but let's, you know,
I don't think she's gonna nix them, I think she just wants to
Know
know,
what the
just
task
feel
is.
like she's being included. That's it.
What is her job?
She's in
Director of
charge
Arts
of,
and
yes, Parks and Rec.
She's what?
Parks and Rec.
That's
she's
what I
the new
thought.
director.
Yeah,
Yeah, basically city land and, you know, landscaping and
trees are parks.
trees and parks. But sometimes it's not her and there's a
Well,
weird
there's the land,
split.
there's the lands people too.
Yeah,
they're-
and that's why sometimes Andy Stone is actually the
I
best
think
person
I think that's where you should go.
to go, but
Don't
Well, you know, I have to speak to, I'm working on the
You know the
application
government better
for
than I
the
do.
Tree City, and I have to go
Andy
speak
Stone
with
would be the
Catherine
best
Ann
person.
and
I know,
Perfect.
David's
Director
working on that.
Riggs
Let's just
and
let 'em
somebody
know.
from
Just-
engineers.
Oh
So
my
how
God,
about
we
I
don't
just
need to just have
work
50,000
that
people
in?
involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
What do you think,
So
Catherine Ann? Now
David's,
we've got this.
David's
Yeah.
following it up.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do y'all want to take a look? Here's the list. I'll pass it down
Oh.
if anybody wants to look.
anyway, okay. So we'll have Catherine Ann look at this and get her more involved than right now, which would be great. So this was actually forwarded to her, but I got a reply that said she's out of the office. So
Oh, so you
things do
forwarded
go
that-
forwarded to her.
Oh, wait, so you forwarded this document to her?
I forwarded a bunch of things.
Okay,
so.
great, great, great.
She's not in the office right now.
Okay.
So, okay, so we'll have to figure out the next step for that and get some information, and then we'll go forward with the engineering part after Catherine Ann looks at this. Thank you. Great, okay. Data interns and maps. Jim?
So I think our main job, leaving last time, was to identify good planting sites. And so Roxanne and I met, and thinking about how we would chunk up the city. It seemed like neighborhoods made the most sense, and so we're talking about that. But then we started talking about the Hocking River corridor, and so that's why I included this first picture here, before even talking about the neighborhoods, and we both agreed that it's just a trench running through the city.
So
And it's an
the Athens
eyesore,
ditch.
and instead of being something that's really attractive, it's, I don't know, I just find it very disturbing.
One time, when I was with the Sierra Club, we decided we would try and see if we can get some pollinator plants growing in that area and not mow everything. And no one would take, I mean, there's like 5 different people that you have to talk to. It's all divided up. It's very complicated.
Well, that's
And-
it. I mean, when I first got here, which was in the mid-90s, Nancy Bain was on the city council. She was also in geography, so I was talking to her about it. And she said, it's the Hocking Conservancy people. So I talked to them about planting trees, and they say, no, the Army Corps of Engineers said we
Right.
cannot plant trees. So then I called the Army Corps of Engineers and said, no, we didn't say that. It's up to you guys, whatever you want to do. And so they're both kind of pointing their finger at each other as.
Well, not only that, but the commissioners are involved in some way. The city is involved in some way. I mean, little parts of it belong, I mean, it's really,
Yeah, but there
Madness.
are properties that are part of the conservancy, part of the city, part of the university, and one of the things that David Riggs was actually trying to figure out was what land was what. And we
Right.
were thinking that the low-hanging fruit might be to go after the city right away and
Right.
start planting trees
Right.
there first, if possible. But if not, Andrew Chicky said that he does, and David Riggs also has a contact with the Conservancy. And he was willing, both
Right.
of them were willing to help.
Right.
Hocking
I think it's
Conservancy.
interesting
The
that
Hocking-
the
the-
Army Corps of Engineers said we have no issue
Right.
with planting trees
Right.
here.
This goes
And
way
I,
back.
I went and talked to them.
It's very weird.
With Chris Nisley at one point, to see about what the sort of things we could do. And I think that they were coming around to the idea that it's better, and they said, you know, we may have to be doing some X, Y, and Z with the invasives, because it's kind of making our riprap dislodge. But, you know, we hear ya, we do, and they actually, along with the county, well, not the county, the university and the city and the Conservancy, were doing, kind of going along, getting along with having no mow strips. So we were starting to start an MOU between all the parties. Andy Stone was part of that, so.
What happened?
Well, things got, like, the university decided to do it in one set area. The city's been still doing it.
Oh, so there are no mow strips now?
There are, well, if the season, there were when I was last there in city council, so.
Okay.
What am I looking at?
Andy
trees
was
they're
very
planning to
interested
plant,
in
that's
that
the different
sort of
part.
thing.
But
Then there was the program with the, that would go right along with this, because it would be pollinator, is the thing that was supposed to happen with linear pollinator strips and ODOT. That was Chris Nisley's baby, so I don't know where that is now.
Goodness.
So there might be other money.
Okay.
So if we do plant trees, I feel like I've done something for the
I
city of
know.
Athens all these years. So if that falls through, then we started talking about neighborhoods and how do you define what neighborhood would be targeted. And so that's when, Roxanne, jump in if I skip something here. How might we think about what neighborhoods to prioritize? And there's thoughts about how much canopy cover it has now, how much it has lost over time. And so for both of those, I just went to this NAIP, National Agricultural Imagery Program, where you can download the imagery. And so the earliest date for Athens is 2004. And then it jumps to 2009, and then it's roughly every 2 years since then. So the most recent was actually 2021, but it's taken in the fall, and so the leaves are changing color, and so it just didn't compare as well to some of these others. But I just zeroed in on 2 neighborhoods, just to give you an idea of what the changing imagery looks like. So 2019, that first one is just best guess as to what it looks like now. 2013, that coincides with that report that got sent around about the, is it Klepner, I think her name was?
Yeah.
So that's what it looked like there, and then the 2004 is the earliest.
Before the trees.
And you can,
Tree in this, yeah.
you have to be careful because time of day, season, shadows, color, I mean, it can look a lot greener than it really might be. But if you do start picking up certain areas, you can, hey, there's a tree gone there, right? You can start seeing individual trees go. So I think, in my mind, this is probably the best imagery that we have available to us, and I just wanted to show you what it looked like in terms of what do we do with it. I mean, compared to that report, she's identifying species on the ground in the right-of-way. You know, and if we want to think about, oh, that 30-20-10 rule, then you have to know what the individual species are. That's very labor-intensive, and it takes a certain skill set to be able to identify all those different species. This is just digitizing where the green clumps are, right? And so you can identify total canopy cover, and I suppose you could tag individual trees, like put the plots down. And if we get that right away, we can only focus on
Right.
that.
Right. Well, one thing, in order to maybe get individual trees and things like that, is crowdsourcing them and maybe doing like bio blitzes, but just with trees, and having people go out and Instagram them. One of the things that we were talking about in the events when we got sidetracked, about one thing that the code enforcement office people could just take a picture of the tree that's in front of the rental, and then they can say, it's a good tree or a bad tree. It has dead limbs or not. And then that would be able, you know, if they were cognizant of looking at those and having to at least do 2 questions and a picture or something, that would be getting a lot of information into. So they can put it in their tablets. So.
In the growing season.
What crowd are you
Yeah.
planning on getting?
There's lots of people who would love to do this sort of stuff. To do a bio blitz. Oh, yeah.
Which people?
Oh, like all of Athens Conservancy would come and do stuff. They love doing this sort of stuff. Mary knows bunches of people, and Rob knows lots of people. There'd be lots of people to do a bio blitz.
I think that individual surveys down to the species is interesting, but it's not needed
Right.
for us to determine where we have to plant trees. The great thing, and I think the unexpected thing, is that we have pretty high resolution images where we can see down to the individual tree. And at least in some areas, it's very obvious how from 2004 to 2013, you can see more trees and also more mature trees, it appears. But then from 2013 to 19, you can begin to see streets where you have issues. And at least in the Near East neighborhood, some of those streets are associated with rentals. And then we go back to how I was talking about how in code that when certain housing is improved, that they're supposed to go through a shade tree commission review. And part of that is we look at the permeable and the non-permeable space and we talk about the trees. So I think that we can do the proactive thing of maybe planting trees in neighborhoods again, but I think we also need to work with code to make sure that we know when we can actually proactively go in and say, hey, this has triggered a review, now you got to comply, and code's going to back us. So I think we've got a couple of things going on, identifying, just opportunities, but also identifying code violations.
The first thing we need to know is where there's actually public lands.
Yeah.
Where is it that we can plant? And that's why I was hoping you would be here to bring that tonight.
Well, I'll make sure that I go and get it from them next week,
Well,
Nancy.
I think the other thing, like what we talked about with the MOU, is making sure that we kind of follow our mission statement of looking and making sure with equity and these sort of issues too. It's very easy to go in the easiest neighborhood to plant trees, sort of thing. So that's something that we should also.
And
I went through my neighborhood, and it didn't take long. It was kind of fun. but I had no idea where the public land really was, because it's different with every street, they say.
It is, yeah, so city right-of-way is different depending on the street. One thing that Andrew reminded me of is that in July, he's going to get back to his idea of contacting owners, property owners, and asking whether or not they would be interested in planting a tree.
Well, that's good, as long as, but we should have some ability to decide where we look first, shouldn't we?
Well, this is a separate program, I think, Nancy. So we can, work with Catherine Ann and figure out where we're going to spend our budget for planting trees for this fall. But in addition, Andrew's idea is that we would get trees from the tree bank and just provide it to the homeowners, and they would plant it and maintain it themselves. And we could maybe have some influence by looking at tree canopy. We could say, hey, Andrew, you can't do the entire city. Maybe you just want to contact homeowners
That's
in
what I'm
these
saying.
particular
I'm not saying
neighborhoods.
not do that, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
let's find out which addresses we're going to try first.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know how, if people will want to do this or not.
Right.
It's interesting.
I think.
I've got a spot right now.
Give you a tree.
I think one of the things also is that this is an opportune time that you would give information to the person and do some of these other, sort of processes.
Because they really do need to water it.
Well, and if you are entrusting them with a baby tree, they need to be able to nurture it and make sure it gets all its recommended
Don't bang it with their
things.
mowers. And-
Yeah.
So this would only be owner-occupied houses then we would target, I assume?
That's Andrew's project, is he wants owner occupied, yeah. Which is separate than the bus stops, which is separate than if we wanted to plant at West State or the Riparian or wherever we decide.
Well, and there's been projects with rental people too, to plant trees out in front. So.
And one of the things that David's looking into is can we get 1-inch diameter trees for the homeowners rather than the 2-inch, which would be almost impossible for them to plant by themselves. They're really huge.
Hefty.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So do you have homework for us and stuff? You want us to do
Going
anything?
forward, you mean? Well, I guess when Rox and I met, our priority was if we can plant along the Hocking River, that would be what
Okay.
we want to do.
Then let's make a recommendation that, let's look at making a recommendation to the mayor, because I think that's really who's, the mayor and Andy, for this, might give
Yeah.
them some more impetus or,
I think that what David was going to do is see who owned what along the river, and then to advise us, so that way we could specifically,
Who to ask first?
just either go to Catherine Ann or the university or whoever. Yeah, so the next step is really we got to get David's
Okay.
Yeah.
maps.
right?
I don't know how, they would be excellent, in my mind, to make publicly available, here's the right-of-way, but I don't know if they're precise enough to do that.
He said that there are maps on
Well,
the
there's-
webpage, but I haven't looked at them.
On
Right.
what webpage?
I think it's on code, because it's in one of the FAQs now, where he is giving me a link to where they are.
Okay, I'll look too.
Yeah.
I mean, the auditor's
Yeah.
website has stuff too. The county auditor.
Yeah, but I don't
Yep.
think they have right-of-way on there, do they?
It says yes, that it does
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
yep,
Where is it? From the
it does
county.
have city. Yeah, it has city-owned property. I don't know if it has city right-of-way.
Well, that's the big thing.
That I
'cause
don't know if
think
it's
all that
easy to
imagery was
find.
done by
Parcel number,
Beauregard.
yeah.
And I don't think it was
Parcel.
meant to be legally binding kind of stuff. It was just,
Well, let's see what we get from David.
okay.
He's got the big map.
So, okay.
I hope so.
Catherine, this looks great.
Oh, yeah, well, that's the
Huh?
Arbor Day.
Say what?
That's the Arbor Day Committee's work. They set.
No, I mean the trees and stuff. I mean,
Yeah, right, that's what they did.
Yeah.
I will pass that along.
Yeah.
Maybe Mary's watching.
Okay, for the next meeting in July, I will not be here. I thought maybe we could all meet in our various committees and continue work
And maybe not have a July
and
meeting.
not have a July meeting.
Summer recess.
But that doesn't mean that you can't not meet with your committee, okay? I will be calling up.
Here's the question, though. It says that we can meet in twos, but as soon as we meet in threes, we have to make it public. And it just so happened that Nancy wasn't able to join Jim and me when we had our meeting, but we realized if she had joined us, we would have been in violation. So
Wait, what?
we?
Sunshine law.
Oh, wait, so we have to,
We can
making
only
public
have
means what?
You have to make a
Two
public
people
announcement.
from Shade Tree
Okay,
at a meeting.
so what constitutes notice?
I don't know.
A public announcement of
Public
the meeting?
announcement,
Okay.
It's
and
the same for city council, yeah. it's
Who do
just-
we
You
give
just-
that to?
To
Scott?
Patty.
Oh, Patty? Okay, Patty.
Yeah,
Okay,
Oh,
so
maybe
if
it's
we're
good
gonna
on
have a
Facebook
meeting, and
then.
how much in advance do we need
24
to?
hours.
Okay.
How about
Thank
that?
you. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. If we had 7 people, we wouldn't have any problem because you'd make, so, anyway, that's
Okay,
sunshine.
good to know.
Okay, so,
Okay.
old business is now old. Opportunities for people to speak? Thank you. Adjournment. Can I have a yay for adjournment?
Yay, adjourn.